Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Danielson. I'm a product support technician here at Realityworks. I just wanted to take a little bit of your time to give you a brief demo of our guideWELD VR virtual welding simulator. What I'm going to go over today, first I'm going to do a quick product overview, what our goals are with it, what comes with it, take a quick look at the curriculum, that sort of thing. Then we'll go into the hierarchy of the accounts so you'll know what you're dealing with when you're working with the software itself. Then I'll get you inside the software to see what the student's going to see. Do a little stick welding, do a little MIG welding, so you can see all that. Then I'll give you a few extra resources at the end in case you have questions or follow-up inquiries, and you can look at some of those links there. So as far as the product overview goes, we've got a few goals in mind with our guideWELD VR system. First, our goal is to create qualified welders faster. Basically, in a school scenario, in a school setting, it's hard to keep track of an entire classroom worth of students at the same time and also give them that personal feedback they need to correct their welding technique. With our guideWELD VR system, we actually have a software that gives them corrective feedback as they're running those welds. That way, while they're practicing with correct technique instead of just running that weld, hoping they did well and needing to practice it again in case they've done something wrong at that point. We're also aiming to create more welders in a short amount of time. Basically, learning to weld, it can be a bit of an intimidating experience for people, and it's hard to get students into that welding booth without first going through safety protocols, a bit of a base learning curve that they need to have before they can start working with a live weld. Whether it's just student outreach or it's getting students that are in the welding class for the first time a chance to touch steel to metal. The guideWELD VR system is a really good way to get students that first contact with welding in a safe environment. Also, our goal is to reduce the cost of consumables used with the guideWELD VR system. Basically, to become a good welder, it's all about practice and practice. And when you're trying to get those basics down, those same basics you're going to need no matter what type of welding you do in the future, it can take a lot of time to get that practice in and get those techniques in. With our guideWELD VR system, not only are we giving them corrective feedback as they're practicing, so their practice is giving them better experience, but you're also not consuming the raw materials that you would otherwise be using, doing it in a live booth. So you're saving on fuel, you're saving on steel, you're saving on rods, all that. So what comes with our guideWELD VR system? First, you've got the workstation. That's the gray base here. Then you're going to get a MIG gun or a stick gun, or both, depending on what you would be looking to get there. It'll come with a pair of welding gloves. Now, the welding gloves aren't actually required for the system to function and be used, but they are there just for that tactile sensation of holding the gun with the bulky gloves on. You'll have 3 joints to practice with. You'll have a T-joint, a lap joint, and a butt joint. It'll come with a couple of cables, a USB cable to plug it into power, a USB cable to plug it into a computer, and a power cable to plug it into the wall so it gets power there. And then lastly, you'll also get a full curriculum that comes with our guideWELD VR system. The curriculum, like I said, it's meant to be a complete curriculum, so it's not just about the act of welding itself. It talks about careers that go into welding, talks about welding safety, the type of equipment you're going to use, being able to spot defects for different types of welds, and it's meant to be a complete teaching tool there. It's going to have teacher's guides for each of the units. Units are going to be broken down into lessons, and the lessons are going to be broken into just 3 segments meant to take a class period each, basically. You'll have presentation slides too that'll go with those curriculum. That will go with the curriculum. That way you can lecture and the students can be paying attention to that at the same time. There'll be student note pages that come with it. Note pages there just to make sure students are keeping track of the right information while they're watching whatever video or presentation slide you're playing at that time. There'll of course be quizzes and tests that come with the curriculum because no curriculum will be complete without that. And then naturally we'll have some answer keys in there too for each of those quizzes and tests just to save on your time as an instructor needing to grade that. So going into the accounts a little bit here. The accounts are effectively a tier of 3 things. You have your administrator account, you're going to have your instructor account, and you're going to have your student account. So the administrator account is going to come default when you install the software. It'll always be there. That account really does three things for you. It creates and manages instructor accounts. It recovers instructor passwords should those be lost at some point. And it allows you to change what unit of measurement you're going to be using with the system, be it standard or metric measurements. Excuse me. Then you have instructor accounts. Under that admin account, you can make as many instructor accounts as you want. That's one nice feature about our system. You don't actually have to have subscriptions or licenses or anything like that. Once you've bought the system, you can download this software onto as many computers as you need to, create as many instructors, as many students as you want on that system. The instructor accounts are going to keep track of classes. They're going to create students and add them to those classes. And then they're also going to create the welding assignments themselves. You'll be able to manipulate those welding assignments so it's not just a list of ones we've pre-made, that we have a fairly extensive list of those. You'll also be able to choose for yourself what type of metal you want the weld to be, what you want the work and travels angles to be. So if you have specific types of welds that you want the students to be practicing for, like local industry or something like that, you can set the parameters for this to practice those parameters for welds. So that way the students are getting the right type of practice in for your environment. Then you have the student accounts. The student accounts, really, they're there to practice the welds, they're there to test on the welds, and then they can naturally see their grades and reports that they've had up to that point when practicing the welds. And I'll get you inside the welding booth here. First, though, I'd like to go over the dexterity guides. This is another thing, a unique thing that sets our system apart. Unlike some other welding systems where you have a fully realized welding environment, virtual welding environment, you run the weld, it grades you, and then you run the weld again. Our system gives corrective feedback in real time to the student. And we call these our dexterity guides. Basically, you have 5 indicators or five dexterity guides that the unit's going to keep track of to give the student feedback on what they're doing correctly or what they're doing incorrectly. So first we got the speed indicator. That's like minus, plus, and equal sign in the middle of the screen. That speed indicator is going to be telling the student what it wants them to do. So as they're running that weld, it'll tell them if they want them to speed up with a plus, or a minus will say it wants them to slow down. The travel angle is going to be in the upper right-hand corner of the screen, and the work angle in the upper left-hand corner. Those arrows, once again, are telling the students the direction it wants the gun to move. So whether it wants it tilted left or right, or whether it wants it tipped up or down, that's what those indicators are going to tell the student there. And if you don't see an indicator, that means they're in the right position there. Then you have the nozzle to plate distance. That's going to be that indicator on the tip of the gun you see in that little picture there. That's going to be much like the bubble on a level, where you want that to be resting about in the middle of that picture. So it'll be green if it's at the right distance. Otherwise, if it's too far forward or too far back, it's going to turn red. And that just tells the student you need to change your position to be at the right distance from that plate. And then lastly, there's going to be the straightness indicators. That's those dashed lines to either side of the gun on that picture. Those are what's considered straight for practicing the weld there. As you get higher in difficulty, because there are difficulty settings for our welders, you get tighter and less leeway for the students, less wiggle room for the student to be considered correct in. Let me go ahead and get you inside our software really quick so you can have a quick look at what I'm talking about. So this is the student's view of the software. Basically, you'll have a list of the assignments, you'll have the name of the assignment, and it'll show all the parameters that the assignment is looking for. What type of metal, what type of joint, what the work and travel angles are, all that information. You can click to practice here, and I'll go ahead and practice a MIG really quick. You'll get a quick cutscene of them putting on their PPE. This cutscene will only play the first time you turn the software on each time. It's just there to remind students that PPE is important when running the weld, but to give them more arc time while they're practicing in the classroom, we only have it play that one time, and after that, then they get to just practice that weld to get that technique down. Once it comes up, it wants you to tack the weld. For our system, when you tap the weld, that is also when the unit calibrates itself. So instead of having a separate calibration window that you need to go to every time something's off with the system, it calibrates each time it runs that weld. So you know you're running a good quality weld each time with the system. So you hold it in that position that it shows on the screen. Do the same in the other corner. And then you're live welding at that point. You can see those different dexterity indicators popping up on the screen there. So if I go into the corner and start welding, and you see the gun turning golden there, that basically means that everything's going right. So keep doing what you're doing. It's a bit of positive reinforcement. And then once you've ran enough of the weld, you have a save button in the bottom right-hand corner pop up on the screen. You get to save it and see your graded score at that point. Now, the way the scoring works, you get a percentage for each of those 5 dexterity guides we talked about. So it'll give you a grade based on your work angle, your travel angle, nozzle to plate speed, and straightness. That gray area is what it considers correct for that practice. And that orange line is where you were sitting. So for instance, with this one, my work angle actually would have been a little low for most of that weld bead there. But because I was within that gray area, it's considered correct. Then it averages those scores together and gives you your final grade. You have the option for teaching purposes to watch a video replay of the weld. So if the student ran something or wondering what they did wrong, you can be watching to see if they're making jarring movements while running that bead, or if they're rolling their wrist while trying to run the bead. You also have a history, which is a graph of all the welds they've done up to that point. All the practices would be in black. All the tests would be in orange there. Now let me run that same weld, but on a higher difficulty really quick, just to show you the difference there. You can see already, even with just the straightness lines, what's considered straight is much tighter than it was previously. And the indicators are popping up much more quickly than they were before too. But the advantage with our system is because the student is getting that corrective feedback while they're running their practice, that means they're practicing good technique every time they're practicing with this unit, instead of just having to run the weld, hope they did well, and run the weld again. And there you see the graded report again. You can see those gray areas are much tighter now, giving less wiggle room for what's considered correct for running that weld. I'll go ahead and run a stick weld quick here. Switching out the guns on our unit is very simple. You just power the unit off. It's about a half turn to unscrew the plug at the bottom of the gun. Plug the other gun into the port. Half turn to screw it back into place. You power the unit back on, and then it takes a few seconds for this computer to recognize that the system's been powered back up. There it goes. So for stick, just like with MIG, the unit is going to want to calibrate itself for that first weld, just before you start welding there. Unlike with a real stick gun, it's going to ask you to pick up the gun first, and instead of it starting to arc the moment you're touching metal, it's going to ask you to hold in the position, because once again, when our system tacks, it calibrates itself. So hit that button there, do the same in the other corner, and then you're live welding at that point. A nice feature about our system as well is our stick gun actually replicates consuming the electrode as you're running that weld there. So the students have to practice feeding that bead or feeding that weld as they're running the weld. Let me go into position here. While you're practicing that weld, you have the ability to reload the electrode there. It'll re-extend it to full length on the gun, and you'll go through an animation of that being switched out. You can chip the slag off the weld. And over in the bottom left-hand corner too, you'll see that the student will see exactly what they're supposed to be practicing while they're running that weld there. So it'll show them the speed, the travel, the work angle, all that information. And you can save and see your graded report at that point. So let me get back to my PowerPoint really quick. Did have a chance to see that student report. You have the ability to print it off every time too, but you'll see the 5 different dexterity guides. It'll average those out, telling you what it was being graded against, and it'll give you that final score at the end once you've averaged it. So a few additional resources. We have some customer support links for you. If you go to realityworks.com/knowledge-base, we've got a product support website with all sorts of videos going through how to set up the system, how to use it, how to run basic welds. Even got the software out there to download. So if you were curious to get a look at it before you started running it, before you went out and purchased it, you could download it and take a look at it that way. We've also got some documentation for everything I've gone through here, plus extra. If you had questions afterwards, you can feel free to reach out to us at product support. On that web link, you're going to see a chat feature. We're open 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. every weekday, I should say. You have an email link, and you can also give us a call, 1-800-830-1416. We're option 2 at the menu. If you're curious about prices and such, you can dial that same number, reach out at option 1 there, and the account services team would be happy to get you in touch with your state representative. I know right now they've got a $500 deal going where you can get a $500 promotion off a guideWELD VR or guideWELD Live simulator at the moment. So if you're curious to see what they could do for you, feel free to get a quote from them. There wouldn't be any cost to it. Aside from that, thank you very much for your time today. I hope you found this educational. If you've got any questions, like I said, feel free to reach out at us at product support. Otherwise, thank you very much and enjoy your evening.